Isn't it discouraging to write an email in English, getting the grammar just right and thinking carefully about your word choices, only to click send and have your email go unanswered? There's no question that writing an email in another language is stressful and it takes a lot of time. That's exactly why I've shared past lessons on how to write a professional email step by step and common mistakes to avoid when writing emails in English. And in this Confident English lesson, I want to go one step further. I want to go beyond the basics to help you eliminate that stress and be sure that when you spend time writing an email in English, it is read and it is answered just the way you intended. In other words, I want to help you write compelling emails. And a compelling email is an email others want to read and they want to respond to, whether you're writing an update to a team or sending an email to make a networking contact. Now, to help you do all of this, to help you write compelling emails, I've decided to do something a bit different. I recently interviewed a colleague of mine, Elena Mutonono. Elena is a former English teacher and accent trainer turned business coach, and she works with her clients on how to write effective emails in English. I've asked her to join me in our interview to share some of her top recommendations with you. In this interview, Elena and I discuss simple mindset shifts that can help you overcome the anxiety and stress of writing emails in English. We also discuss practical steps to help you write effective emails, how to appropriately follow up when an email goes unanswered, how to handle mistakes, and much more. As always, if you enjoy this lesson today, I would love to know, and you can tell me in two very simple ways. Number one, give this lesson a thumbs up on the Speak Confident English YouTube channel, and while you're at it, be sure to subscribe so you never miss one of my Confident English lessons. The second thing you can do is share a comment with me below. I'd love to hear what insights you gain as you listen to this interview. With that, let's transition to my interview with Elena. We'll start with her background and then immediately get into writing compelling emails in English.
Annemarie, hi everyone. Thank you so much for being here. So I'm Elena Mutonono. I'm originally from Ukraine and I've been living in the United States for the past 13 years after I got married to a Zimbabwean national. And I am running a business as a coach, business coach for online language teachers, helping them move away from one-to-one classes and to scale their businesses. Before that, I was an ESL teacher and an accent trainer. So I have that background. And of course, as somebody who has been living in the US for 13 years as an immigrant, I know what it feels like, even when your language is kind of on an advanced level. It's very different being in a new culture and getting used to speaking to people and talking about what you do. And so I always approach my work from the position of people that are just like getting into the online world, and in a way they try to acclimate themselves because it's almost like going into a new territory, how sometimes you feel inadequate when you're writing an email. And no matter your level of language, you kind of feel like, am I doing it right? Are people going to read it right? So thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Well, like I said, I'm very excited, and I appreciated the language you use in talking about your email course, this idea of writing compelling emails that you are certain will be read. So I'd really love to dive into some of your expertise and get into mindset or mindset shifts that might help international English speakers overcome some of those initial frustrations or fears, that anxiety that they experience communicating in English in an email.
Yeah, well, if you are an international speaker working for a company, right, you are not an imposter. You are there because people chose you to be there. So it really helps to keep that in mind, because I know as an immigrant, I used to have a lot of those thoughts of, well, I may not be welcome, or my English is not my native language, and I make mistakes. And so those thoughts actually make it harder for you to build connections and to speak confidently.
Mhm.
So reminding yourself that it's no coincidence that I'm here, my voice matters. It's no coincidence that I'm here and I know enough English to communicate is
Mhm.
really powerful. These are maybe some of those thoughts that will create a different feeling in you,
Mhm.
as opposed to the feeling of inadequacy where you feel you are telling yourself, well, I'm not really a native speaker. So while you may not be a native speaker, or as we say, international, you're an international speaker, there are many people like you in the company. And the fact that you are in the company is not by mistake. So reminding yourself that your voice matters, you were chosen to be here, you are in your place, and you know enough English to communicate is a good way to generate that sense of confidence and
Mhm.
empowerment that we need to put the email together.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
Yes, because if we come from the sort of limited mindset of I'm not enough, then anxiety goes up, and then we will doubt ourselves, and we'll spend a lot more time putting together an email than we really need to. We will make it harder for ourselves.
That's true. As you were talking, that reminded me of some things that we address a lot in my Confident Women community. We talk about fixed mindset and growth mindset,
Right.
these little shifts that we can make. And if we stay in that fixed mindset of, I'm not good enough, or I'm not a native speaker, whatever it
Mhm.
might be, it just immediately stops us from making any progress whatsoever. And if
Right.
we can make those little adjustments, suddenly this whole new opportunity opens to us. So I appreciate those
Yeah.
clear examples that you've
Mm.
provided. What would be your top one or two recommendations to help someone take those first steps in writing a compelling email that not only gets read, but also gets answered in the way that someone is hoping for an email to
Mm.
get answered, whether it's an informational email or a request for a meeting?
Mm. It's very interesting, but sometimes we focus a lot on how do we put together sentences or how do we carry our thought across, which of course is important. But for an effective email, one of the things that we want to focus on is the formatting, right?
Mhm.
So it's very important to keep it short,
Mhm.
right? When you started out, you have just one generic sentence. I hope you're doing well, something like that, short
Mhm.
sentence. And then you go straight to what you want to talk about and try again going back to short sentences. And if possible, use bullet points, which
Mhm.
is kind of really simplistic. And sometimes it feels like it's overly simplistic, but life is too short to
Mhm.
read long emails, especially at work. So make it easy
Mhm.
for the person, whoever you are approaching. So keep it short and simple using these ideas or like formatting
Mhm.
techniques. And make it very easy for people to respond. Sometimes when we write an email, we have like multiple questions. And I know you might have so many questions to ask, but try to focus on one, maybe two that are connected that people can quickly answer.
Mhm.
And sometimes what I do in my course, I also have templates. So it really helps sometimes to have a template of what
Mhm.
you want to write, for example, to your boss when you need a meeting, or to your client when you need to set up a meeting, to have a very simple template that you can readjust and reread before you send, but
Mhm.
make it really, really easy for yourself and for your client to respond.
Right. I really love that advice. And I think to some degree, it might provide a sense of relief that I don't
Yes.
have to write these long paragraphs. I can just keep it bullet pointed, keep it simple. And you're right that if someone receives that short email, it's so easy to read it quickly and they're far more likely to respond
Yes.
because they
Yes.
don't feel the need to respond in a lengthy manner.
Right.
I
Right.
think sometimes when we get those lengthy emails, at least for me, I feel that pressure that
Right.
they're
Oh, I
expecting
need to
something
think
just as
about,
long.
yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love that advice. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
What approach is best when following up to an unanswered email? So if you've put all this work into creating a compelling email and then it goes unanswered, what do you do?
So for me, it's quite common. I actually talk about following up as a part of your emailing strategy. So if you send somebody an email with a request or maybe an offer and you don't hear anything back from people, it's okay for you to follow up within a week. Or if you have a um, deadline in your initial email, then a couple of days before the deadline to say, okay, what do you think about this? Can we meet on this day, or would you like me to reschedule this? So in fact, sometimes when people receive an email, they may not respond right away, and actually they appreciate the follow-up. And that's also another mindset shift, because we
True.
feel like, oh, I just sent an email, I did all this work, this person should be able to respond. But if we give a little bit of grace to the other person and say, well, maybe they didn't see it, or maybe they were thinking about responding and they didn't, then it's actually a good thing for you to follow up. And it's kind of an act of service. And
Mm,
people will usually appreciate the reminder. And if you don't hear from them, then you can choose what you want to do, whether set up a meeting, face-to-face meeting in an office. But in my case, for example, if I'm sending an offer, a pitch, I realize that after one follow-up, I probably will not follow up anymore. So the person is not
okay.
interested, and I will create a different plan for myself.
Mhm.
Okay, if this person does not respond, maybe I can send it on to somebody else.
Okay. Perfect. That is exactly my next question is, do you have a limit on how many follow-up emails you might
Right,
send? I
right,
appreciate
right.
that.
Yes, yes. I mean, because we can follow up forever, and that's why it just helps to have a deadline. So this is actually one of the things for when you are writing an effective email and do this ABC or making a short bullet list. It helps to include, hey, can you respond by Friday? And
Mhm.
I also like to include day of the week and the date together,
Okay.
because sometimes it's like, oh, can you respond by April 15th? And you're like, what's April
What day is
15th?
that?
Yes. So if somebody gives you like an idea, oh, it's Wednesday, then you can, oh, okay, so it means I need to get my act together by Tuesday or something.
Yeah.
So it just like gives you a little bit more structure, and again makes it easy on your reader. So making it easy on somebody's your act of service. And when you're sending an email that is about making it easy for somebody and not like burdening them, then it's
Mhm.
likely that you will get better responses,
Yeah.
and get your voice gets heard.
Yeah. Yeah. Great advice. Well, I have one more question for you, if I may ask. I know when I talk to my students about the challenges of writing emails, one of the things that always comes up is the fear of making mistakes. And
Yes.
that fear results in an enormous amount of time and effort that goes into writing the email,
Mm.
anxiety, all of that. So, what is the best way to respond to mistakes when they do happen,
Hmm.
or emails that have been misunderstood?
Yes. So one of the things, so there's like misunderstanding, that misunderstanding things can happen on both sides. So
Mhm.
it's not just, oh, only I make mistakes. Somebody who's writing to you may make mistakes. So again, having compassion on yourself and compassion on the other person, and also recognizing that we're all humans and we are going to make mistakes. And whether or not it's a grammar mistake or maybe it's some other mistake, maybe you just didn't look at the calendar and use the wrong date, for example. So you can always correct mistakes. Mistakes show that you are human. So let's not try to be superhuman people, right? Superhumans, we it's okay to make mistakes. And after you make mistakes, it's good, for example, if you notice if it's like a very technical, like for example, you were not sure, didn't write the date, and it's actually an important piece of information, you can just follow up and let people know, oh, apologies, here's the correct information. However, if it's not really um some a mistake that is going to make an impact on somebody, you
Mhm.
can just let it go unless
Mm.
somebody just brings it up. So for example, if you had a typo or something, you spelled right instead of WRITE, then you wrote RIGHT. So it was clear what you meant.
Mhm.
So there's no reason to go, oh, well, sorry, there was a typo in sentence 2 or 3. So just use your discretion. And if you misunderstand somebody else's email, it's good for you to, before you tell yourself a story, to write, here's what I understood. Let me know if this is
Mhm.
correct. And if um, this misunderstanding continues, then in an office, typically it would help to just, hey, let's meet and talk about this.
Mhm.
Because it tends to happen that sometimes people just want to be in this endless tug of war of emails, like, oh, this is what I said, this is what I said. So sometimes it is easier to just, if there is something that needs to be clarified, we have meetings for that. We have a meeting and we discuss that, and we actually can see each other's faces, right?
Right.
Instead of reading into the content.
Yeah. I want to ask you about an expression you just used. You were talking about when we meet with others face to face, it can help us avoid reading into content. What does it
Right.
mean to read into something?
Yeah, it's usually when you read something and you understand your own way and you create your own story from what you read. So you read into, so you add your own meaning to
Right.
it. At least that's how, or sometimes it's reading between the lines. Sometimes
Mhm.
there's a phrase of filling in the gaps,
Right.
which creates a lot of communication issues.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you. I picked up on that when you said it and thought, oh, that's a great phrase,
Yes,
a great
yes.
expression
Good.
for my students to learn. And it's something I think we all have a danger of doing. We can read an email and assume a certain tone of voice might be used. If
Right,
we were just to take a moment to pick up the telephone or have an in-person meeting, have an online meeting, and actually hear someone's tone of voice, see their facial expressions,
right.
it may adjust the way
Yes,
in which we understood particular situations. So,
yes. And
yeah,
particularly if you're working in a multicultural environment, I
yeah,
think it's quite common
right.
to have these misunderstandings and to come across as, maybe a little bit rude when you
Right.
do not mean to be rude, but for other person being raised in another culture, that comes across as rude or too direct or maybe too indirect.
Right.
So I think if we are willing to say, this is how I understand this, we are able to learn, which is the whole reason for making mistakes. Is this is where our growth happens, is when we take mistakes and we actually say, okay, I can turn this failure into fertilizers doing the coaching. Like I can use what I did not understand to actually deepen my understanding.
Mm, yeah, I love that. Well, Elena, thank you so much for joining me. And I know many of my students may want to learn more from you. How can they do that? Where can they find you online? How can they learn more about what you have to offer?
Yeah, so I mainly work with online language teachers. And so some of the people that maybe follow you are online language teachers, and they can find me online at elenamutonono.com. I also have a YouTube channel.
Mhm.
Um, Elena Mutonono is my handle. Same handle for Instagram, where I do a lot of content, share a lot of content. And I also have a podcast called Online Bound. It's
Right.
for online language teachers and coaches who want to work sustainably as uh, teachers of languages. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I will make sure that we have links to all of that available
Thank you.
on our website, where we'll post this as one of our Confident English lessons. So thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for sharing your expertise on writing compelling emails.
I appreciate that, Annemarie, and thank you everyone for listening in today.
Thank you.